YouTube, what's going on? Nick here from the Real Hero Show to talk about House of the Dragon episode 2. There will be spoilers, so in case you haven't watched the episode just yet, I do recommend you go watch that and come back here and hear what I have to say. But if you don't mind or care about spoilers and just want to hear what I have to say, period, then let's just fly right into this episode. I want to make a couple book references, so I will be reading straight from both book sources here, and just I want to talk a little bit more about the entire episode and parts I liked and things that they've extrapolated on from the source material. So one of the interesting scenes that obviously was really fascinating and just kind of fun to watch them expand upon was when Sir Otto was, I don't want to say tasked, obviously, because, Viserys wanted to go himself, but being hand of the king, saying, hey, you're too valuable. You can't go to Dragonstone and face your brother. You need to stay here. I'll go instead. And of course, when he gets there, it doesn't look like it's going well because Matt Smith and his gallantly way of standing off the forces, when he takes and unsheaths the sword and kind of just almost daringly taunts Sir Otto and the troops behind him. And of course, you have his own dragon, Caraxes, the bloodworm, which still looks so cool. And the noises that it makes was very unique and something that we haven't really seen before in a Game of Thrones episode with other dragons. We didn't see this in the first series. So, and of course, there's topics, or not topics, but just more so references about how unique Caraxes was as a bloodworm. And we certainly see this and have seen this within the last 2 episodes. And one of the things that's really cool and is to be said, how the dragon riders share, this primordial bond, much like we saw with, Dany Targaryen and Drogon, right? We see it with Syrax and Rhaenyra. We see it with Daemon and Caraxes. So really cool stuff to kind of just see that, and just the visual effects was great. And just see Rhaenyra fly in on her dragon and then land and basically dissolve the entire situation, right? Like when we see them talking in their native tongue, and how as an uncle, he respects his niece, right? So he ends up tossing the egg back to his niece, to Rhaenyra. And notice the dragons didn't have any squabbling. They were just like, hey, what's up, dude? Yo, hey, doing, girl? Like, just chilling, right? Like they weren't going to fight or anything like that. But yeah, just pretty cool stuff to see. Now, there's a passage here in the book, of Fire and Blood, where that scene was just a little different, and not so much the point where the as it's called, the bronze bitch, that he's with, or not with, rather, but the woman that he's with, his paramour, Mysaria, which we see him take there from episode 1, the ending of episode 1, right? It says in the book here that there he remained for half a year, during which time he got Mysaria with child. When he learned that his concubine was pregnant, Prince Daemon presented her with a dragon's egg. But in this, again, he went too far and woke his brother's wrath. King Viserys commanded him to return the egg, send his whore away, and return to his lawful wife, or else be attainted as a traitor. The prince obeyed, though with ill grace, dispatching Mysaria eggless back to Lys, whilst he himself flew to Runestone in the Vale, and in the unwelcome company of his brawn bitch. But Mysaria lost her child during a storm on the narrow sea. When word reached Prince Daemon, he spoke no syllable of grief, but his heart hardened against the king. his brother. Thereafter, he spoke of King Viserys with only disdain and began to brood day and night on the succession. Now, this is pretty interesting because obviously some of the things that we saw in this episode, have slightly deviated, and I'm not that disappointed with it for a couple reasons. Um, we may still see the part where she may get pregnant because she's still on Dragonstone, so it's possible that he may knock her up, and then when she goes away, she might lose the baby in the storm, like the book says. But the whole act of it, we haven't really seen him have this disdain because, as we see later on in the episode, when Daemon's talking to Corlys Velaryon, Corlys kind of talks about the king and I mean, I won't quite say a bad way, but enough so that Daemon was like, "Hey, listen, you're not going to talk bad about my brother. If anyone's going to do it, it's me." So it kind of shows some respect. So, despite where Daemon's current attitude and emotions are in the show, it's slightly different than the way it is in the book, and I think it's going to be okay. And I'll say this because of what's to come later on through the source material. We're going to see that same shift from Prince Daemon, and it's probably going to come within the next episode or two. We've only got a 6 month time jump. We're still about the around 105 106 AC, and things start to jump a little bit further as we see. And if you watch the preview for next week, so semi spoiler for next week's episode, we see that couple things. Number one, Alicent Hightower is with heir Aegon II, named after Aegon the First, who conquered Westeros. Now, there's a part about that in the book, which I'm not really going to get into just yet because there are some more spoilers into it. But for the sake of where we're going from episode 2 to episode 3, I like the way things are looking in terms of the accuracy and building upon the pages, because again, the way George R. R. Martin kind of wrote this wasn't so much in detail, right? Not much like the Song of Ice and Fire books, and they're kind of having to expand upon things. Another part here. Though Princess Rhaenyra had been proclaimed her father's successor, there were many in the realm, at court, and beyond it who still hoped that Viserys might father a male heir, for the young king was not yet 30. I'm not going to hold it against them because obviously, like the ages and the years are like just slightly off in some parts, but I, I think it's still okay, right? Like it's not that big of a deal. But anyway, Grandmaster Runesitter was the first to urge his grace to remarry, even suggesting a suitable choice, Lady Lyanna Velaryon, who had just turned 12. A fiery young maiden, freshly flowered, Lady Lyanna had inherited the beauty of a true Targaryen from her mother, Rhaenys, and a bold, adventurous spirit from her father, the Sea Snake. As Lord Corlys loved to sail, Lyanna loved to fly, and had claimed for her own no less a mount than the mighty Vhagar. 1 second on that. The oldest and largest of the Targaryen dragons since the passing of the Black Dread in 94 AC. So slightly different, right? We see it's Rhaenys and Corlys who have a talk with Viserys, right? Unfettered. And they're the ones that suggest this. And you can see the look and the emotion that Paddy Considine portrayed in this episode was just outstanding. Like, I mean, I think all the acting in this episode was phenomenal. And like, I'm going to give my rating at the end of this episode, but because the acting was so freaking well done, it's hard not to really just get super, entangled in the complications here, because you've got people who are like, dude, you got to get remarried. You got to get remarried. The realm's looking at you. You can't be weak. And he's just like, dude, my wife's been dead for half a year. Like, I still haven't gotten over this. And it's not so much that they're telling him to get over it, but it's like, you just need to remarry. And when they're like, yo, how's our, marry our daughter, Lena? She's 12. Obviously, there's a lot that's wrong with that. Even in the incest that the Targaryens, surround themselves with. But you can even see when they have that, they go on that walk, and Lena's talking about, have you ever seen Vagar? And he's like, not for some time. And she's like, yeah, she's rumored to have a nest somewhere, along the coast. And that was a vague hint at she's 12, and that's she's been writing her, right? So or writing Vagar. So um I imagine we'll probably see Vagar in the next episode or two. No doubt it would make sense for Lena to be the one writing Vagar. I'll be disappointed if she's not. But you can see that he doesn't want this. Like, he's just like, no, this is not the option. This is not the way to go. And he's got some thinking to do. And then up above, we've got Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, who are kind of going, at each other a little bit. And that conversation was just phenomenal. There's a part at the end of the episode on HBO Max where they talk about this, and just the way they broke that scene down was so well done, so well written. The dialogue was just great. It reminded me of the great dialogue that took place in the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones. So that was, really great to see. And honestly, the other great thing about this show is the fact that you've got, Miguel Spachnik and Ryan Condal. Condal especially is a huge book lore guy, right? Like, he wants to adhere to the source material, which is great. And honestly, that's what's going to make this show great. And then you've got some other great people that are involved that are continuing to make this show come true to life. Like, obviously with George R. R. Martin being on set and chiming in and consulting about things, and he's adding more to the show coming from the book that's between the lines that he's already written. There's a part that even Damon talks about his brother, and saying he's not the strongest. And there's another part here in the book that says, Viserys, the first Targaryen, was not the strongest willed of kings, it must be said. Always amiable and anxious to please, he relied greatly on the counsel of the men around him, and did as they bade more often than not. In this instance, however, his grace had his own notion, and no amount of argument would sway from his course. He would marry again, yes, but not to a 12-year-old girl, and not for reasons of state. Another woman had caught his eye. He announced his intention to wed Lady Alicent of House Hightower, the clever and lovely 18-year-old daughter of the king's hand, the girl who had read to King Jaehaerys as he lay dying. So again, coming from the book, she's of age, right? If this were, termed in real life. So, obviously it makes a little bit more sense, although I can understand some people even saying like, it's a little bit too old for a guy and again, this is the thing, right? He looks older in the show, but in the book, he's not yet 30. So he's like 29. So you're talking about like an 11-year difference, which isn't bad. Like, I know quite a few people who are, 50, who are dating, people at a 15, even 20-year gap, so in between 20s and 40s, 40s and 60s, 30s and 50s. So again, like, it's the idea of it being okay to Viserys for multiple reasons is obviously like understandable from his perspective. And part of the interesting things that we'll probably see more of, obviously from the trailer of next week, is kind of a little bit of a split. So this isn't a spoiler by any means, but there's another part I want to read here at the bottom of this page. It says, when King Viserys took Alicent to wife in 106 AC, House Velaryon was notable for its absence. Corlys, right? He's like, obviously pissed because at the end of the show, you see him up and leave. But then you also saw Rhaenyra leave. And she's thinking that he's going to say Lena, kind of keep it in within the family, right? Princess Rhaenyra poured for her stepmother at the feast, and Queen Alicent kissed her and named her daughter. Quite interesting, right? Because it's your best friend essentially, and now you're naming your daughter. Like it's so weird. But then the other interesting part, uh, from this other book, which is the World of Ice and Fire with the like histories, right? This says something interesting as well about that same scene. Matters became more complicated when, with Sir Otto Hightower's encouragement, King Viserys announced his intention to wed Lady Alicent, Sir Otto's daughter, and the old king's former nursemaid. For the most part, the realm celebrated this union. Rhaenyra, secure in her place as heir, welcomed her father's new bride, for they had long known one another at court. Not all was so joyous out in the Vale, however, when Prince Daemon was said to have whipped his servant through bottom of tidings of marriage, nor at Driftmark, where Lord Corlys and Princess Rhaenyra had seen their daughter Lena rejected by the king. So, with this passage, right, it's saying that Rhaenyra is okay, but in the show, it doesn't seem that way. So, and even in this episode, we see her talk about that she was worried that he only just saw her as a possible heir, but still, knowing she knows that he still wants a son. And this is where like all the politics sort of get involved, and things are going to get very interesting from here on out. So if you're not hooked just yet, you definitely will be moving forward. So there's going to be some interesting parts coming up. I think we're going to get some a nice battle. We're going to see some dragons in action coming up. I could go into spoilers, but I think I'm just going to save that excitement for the next episode. But all I can say is that, in terms of where we're at year wise, we're probably going to see, a few years of a jump here coming up. Right. So again, that would make sense with the trailer, or the preview of next week that we saw at the end of this episode on HBO Max, where it's around 106 AC, 105 to 106 AC, and then we're probably going to get a jump to about 109 AC. So I'm expecting like a 3-year jump at this point, if they're again kind of following how it goes along in the books. But look overall, just super well done. I really don't have a lot of qualms with this episode whatsoever. I would say if there's anything that is sort of like a moment, it was Myseria's voice, that accent. Nothing against her with the acting itself, but I just don't understand why they gave her this weird, like, I don't know. It was like, is it trying to be French? Is it trying to be like Caribbean? I don't know what they were kind of going for with this. I'm like, are you trying to be a cast member in Pirates of the Caribbean, or what? I don't know. Like, so the accent would kind of threw me off, and it was just, I don't say rough to listen to, but it was like you got to make a face and listen to it. That's just me again. Overall, though, I'm going to give this episode a solid 9 out of 10. I know you might be going, whoa, Nick, listen, we're only 2 episodes deep and you're already jumping to a 9. Yeah, because last episode, I rated between like an 8.5 out of 10, and it was a great premiere, broke records. A lot of people were like, yo, Game of Thrones is back, baby. Let's go. You have people who have never watched the show are like, yo, I'm kind of getting hooked on this. And you come out with this episode that was, again, didn't have a lot of action, but it was just so story driven. It was so, just full of great acting and dialogue, and that's really what can make an episode great. And um, a lot of other shows could probably learn a thing or two about this, but um, and I love the issue that we're about to see in the step zones with Kragus Crab Feeder. Like, it's such like a gnarly scene. Like, we don't really see uh, a lot of detail into it, but again, that's where they're just extrapolating more in the scenes. When they're showing the people like these crewmen, prisoners, these men who are being tortured on the sands and just like eaten alive by these crabs. I bet you'll never look at a crab the same way again. But they're being crucified essentially, right? Like their hands are um, nailed to these wooden stakes in the ground in the sand, and just great stuff. Honestly, I mean, it shows that there's someone who is causing ruckus, and obviously with Corlys asking for Viserys's help, like, hey, we need to do something. And one of the things about again, like saying how Viserys wasn't the strongest world of kings, but he didn't want to have war either. He's like, I'm going to avoid war at all costs. Like, let's try and resort to other opportunities to resolve things. However, it may not go that way. So, again, I could go into spoilers here. Not really going to, because I already know this video is somewhat long, but I do appreciate everyone who's made it this far. So, again, just great stuff. Uh, great explanations coming from this book and beyond that. We're gonna see some awesome stuff. So at this point, I know, again, we're a fifth of the way through this season. We're already getting a second season, which is great. And if we see more of this, then we're gonna have a great season, and it's going to set up the second season wonderfully. And I got to give it to Millie Alcock as well. She is just absolutely doing a phenomenal job as Rhaenyra, and same thing with Emily Carey as Alicent. Um, the people, so you got Olivia Cook, who's going to be playing Lady Alicent Hightower. Once we get the bigger time jump, and the same thing with Emma Darcy or Darcy. I forgot how she pronounces that. Sorry if I botch it. But they're gonna have a bit of a little shoe to fill. I kind of threw a little pun in there. It might have been terrible, but they're gonna have some shoes to fill, because these younger actors are just killing it. So again, just great casting, great writing, and all that kind of fun stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the show. And if you guys have read the books out there, then you know what's coming. And if you haven't, I promise to continue to provide some passages that are relative to the show on an episode by episode basis. I will say next week I will be out of town, so I probably won't be able to provide a review for the third episode, just because I'll be out of town, unless I find a way to do it, which I might. But I'll promise to try and provide what I can, and if I can't, then I will definitely be here for the following week on episode 4. So I appreciate all the support. If you want to like this video, hit that thumbs up button. I do appreciate it. If you want to hit the subscribe button to help this channel grow, I also appreciate that as well. And hit the little bell, smash that bell, hit the bell, fly a dragon right into it. I don't care. I do care that you do like it though, or ping it, so that way you'll get notified whenever I release new videos. And then you can have fun conversations with me in the comment section. Comment below. And I'll see you all on the next one.